Hey, this is Derek Ty, and thank you again for listening and watching the podcast. So, today we're going to talk a little bit about a topic that has been on my mind the last couple days, and that is territory. So, a lot of us pray for new territory. We pray that God gives us new territory. It's even in the Bible, the prayer of Jabez, expand my territory. And we talk about in Isaiah actually expanding our tent stakes in new territory. And I'm all for taking new territory. As an entrepreneur, I've taken new territory in many ideas and interest levels and books I've listened to and podcasts I've listened to and businesses I've started, and in those businesses taken new territory physically with obtaining new clients, new areas of town, parts of businesses I've never tried before. So I'm all for asking for new territory. It's funny because the more territory that I've been able to take over the last 15 years as an entrepreneur, I've also learned that you have to keep the territory. So it brings up two topics that I'm going to talk about today, specifically taking new territory and then keeping the territory as yours. So two stories pop into my head specifically. One is from the Old Testament, and what happened was the Israelites were crossing over into the promised land that God had promised them, into the land of Canaan, and he gave them this huge territory. It's basically the state of Israel, or the country of Israel. And the part that a lot of the Israelites didn't grasp as much as they actually had to physically take the territory. They had to have the faith that God was going to provide them the resources, the weapons of warfare in some cases, the peace of knowing that they could walk into some of these towns and they were deserted, and then also the strength from a people standpoint to kind of police these areas and keep the other guys out. The problem was, as they took new territory and physically put their feet on the land, they then had to defend against these other nations that were coming against them. So the more and more their territory expanded, the more they had to kind of set up defenses. Now, God did promise them peace. He promised them blessings. He promised them a land flowing with milk and honey. But no one ever said it was going to be easy. And no one ever said it was just going to be sitting around, and someone dropping grapes in your mouth, right? I think of the same thing in my own physical territory at my farm. So I have a little mini hobby farm. And on this little mini hobby farm, we have animals. We've got, lots of trees. We've got grass and pastures, and we actually have created some little pens for the animals. When we purchased the farm a couple years ago, it was in really bad shape. Not only the main building, but also the barn. The fencing was mostly ripped out, and we have this thing in the Cincinnati, Ohio area called honeysuckle. So if you're familiar with honeysuckle, you know what I'm talking about. It's like a weed slash tree slash bush. And it basically, what I've been told is it's not native to the United States and specifically the Midwest. And it's kind of basically, it grows in anywhere it can that can get sunlight, and it spreads crazy. And it grows like a tree and gets really big. Some people like it because it produces some privacy and it's like screening. And other people don't like it at all because it's more of like a weed and it just takes over. I'm in the second camp. I don't care about the privacy as much as I just don't want it taking over my land. So you can't even walk through the woods in most woods in the Midwest anymore, because anywhere where there used to just be, grass and ground cover, like ivy or even dirt, now it's filled with honeysuckle bushes. And in our territory and our land that we took over, we have spent countless hours, hundreds of hours on our hands and knees chopping these honeysuckle bushes and branches down to the ground. And some of them are as much as 6 inches thick. And what's bad about that is you get your chainsaw really close to the ground and it actually will dull the blades. So you have to either dig them out, or you've got to put these like a hacksaw blade onto a reciprocating saw. We have one with a battery operated, and we kind of saw them down close to the ground. We've also used stump grinders. We've used chemicals. We've tried everything. And if you take that territory literally, so now you're taking it back, in our case, what I found is that even a couple of weeks later, these shoots start coming back out of the ground again from the same thing you just tried to kill. And what I realized is, after doing this for 2 years on our property, the more territory I tried to take, the more land that we wanted to use for pasture and for the kids to ride our four-wheelers. The hard work was, I thought, taking the territory, but actually what I've also realized that the second part of that is you have to maintain the territory. You actually have to keep your defenses up. So these honeysuckle weeds and bushes keep growing back into the same places. We also own a little property down on the river in a town called Loveland, and we have almost 4 acres down on the river. And when we first bought it, it was completely overgrown. You couldn't see the river, you couldn't see the land, couldn't use the land. So it took us about a year between a guy with a bush hog, which is like basically like a tool that goes behind a tractor and it chops all the weeds down. The weeds were 13 to 15 feet high, chopped them down to the ground. Then we had to basically get the grass to start growing again. Then we had to go through all the weeds and trees and poison ivy and cut all that down. So we kind of left it alone. 6 months later, we went down there, and a lot of it around the river part had grown back up. You couldn't see the river in some parts again. So I just sent my son out there this weekend with a machete. It sounds really safe, right? But he's almost 18, so that's okay. With him and his buddy, and cutting trails and cutting some of those weeds back and some of the honeysuckle back. My point is, guys, that we can ask for new territory. We can ask for God to bless us with more clients and customers. But really what we need to think about is, what are we going to do once we have those? Do we have a plan in place? So that's where I'm going to come to the second part of this, is what do we do in business? So, for example, once you have obtained a new business, so basically let's look at it from a perspective of a real estate agent. That's an easy one. So to get a new real estate buyer or seller, you've got to do some advertising. You've got to have done business with someone that they know, a friend or family member. You've got to put a billboard out. You've got to put in Google pay-per-click advertising. You've got to do some kind of advertising or lead generation strategy, right? The second part of that is, once you've got someone's attention, you have to capture them into some kind of a lead. So that might be an email, it might be a Facebook message, it could be a phone call, it could be someone meeting someone at an open house. This is a story hopefully a lot of people can relate to. Most people have bought and sold homes or know someone that's bought or sold a home. Well, once you get the business, once you get the opportunity, what are you going to do with it? Well, what happens with most business owners and most real estate agents, they drop the ball on this stage. They get a lead, they get a note on the, a little piece of paper, on a little sticky note. They write it in their journal one day, and this person says, hey, I want to buy a house, or I want to sell a house. Well, guess what? They don't stay in touch with that person. The person kind of goes, well, I've got some things I need to do first, and they kind of lose touch. And 6 months later, now that, let's say it's a seller, the seller's now decided, yep, it's time for me to go ahead and get my house on the market. And guess what they can't do? They can't find your contact information. They lost it. Maybe you gave them a business card. Maybe it was an email or a voicemail and they lost it. So what are they going to do? They're going to ask a friend or family member, or they're just going to go online and say, hey, I need a real estate agent to sell my house. And they jump on the first opportunity they get. So what happened is the original person that wanted that territory, they wanted to get more leads, they wanted to get more business, dropped the ball when it came to lead follow-up. So I'm going to equate this as for entrepreneurs out there. If you're a restaurant owner and you're putting out Yelp advertising, or you're putting out Google advertising, or you're sending out flyers, or you're going into like a magazine that goes door to door to your neighborhood to advertise your restaurant. Once people have seen that and they go, yes, I want to be part of this, I want to check this out, you've got to get them into some kind of database. Databases are the key. Second thing you want to do is, once you've got them in a database, and that a database can be as simple as a spreadsheet, guys. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. You want to do some kind of regular follow-up with those people. Now, I belong to a couple of these kind of VIP restaurant experience lists where I've gone to the restaurant enough times, I've signed up for their VIP program or their rewards program or whatever you want to call it. The smart ones will email me about once a week or every 2 weeks and talk to me about something. Either it's like, hey, we're going to do a half off wine night tonight, or we're going to do, appetizers are free after 4 o'clock on this date, or you'll get 2-for-1 bonus points if you dine on Sunday night. So what they're doing though, I may not go take advantage of that offer, but what I am going to do is I am going to it's going to stay front of mind with me. So the next time I want to go out to eat, that restaurant who's been in touch with me is a lot more likely to get my business, because I'm thinking, wow, I saw that, steak and, spinach meal that they were putting together, or that glass of red wine looks pretty good. So that image is now in my head. So whatever business you're in, guys, you need to think about this. You need to think about, how am I not only I'm gonna A, pray for new territory, new clients, new business. B, I gotta capture that business with a database. C, I've got to actually follow up with the database, whether that's emails, phone calls, door knocking, whatever you're going to do. And the last thing is harvest that business. When it's times come, don't be afraid to ask for the business. Don't be afraid to ask to continue the next step. A great mentor of mine once told me that there is no such thing as sales. There's only the next logical step in your relationship. And I really like that phrase, because really, if you think about it, if you want to do business with somebody, it is the next logical step in your relationship. So if it's the restaurant analogy that we're going to go back to, if this restaurant sends me this VIP email offer and it makes me feel special, and I say, wow, I want to actually go to eat at that place tonight, then my next logical step is probably clicking on a button that says reserve a table, or maybe calling for a reservation, or I just go to the restaurant and show up. And I might even mention that ad, hey, I saw you guys are offering a 2-for-1 special on dinners tonight, or half price bottle of wine, or whatever it is. But the point is I'm taking that step. And I want you to think about whatever offer you're making out there for your business. Make sure you're doing it in a way that not only entices somebody, but B, if they're not ready to buy, at least keeps them front of mind with you. You want to be top of mind. But and the last part is you want them to actually make some kind of call to action. So there should be a call to action on all these marketing and follow-ups that you're doing. Dine with us today. Reserve a spot. Think about us for Mother's Day. Whatever that kind of call to action is, and then keep following up. The one thing that I've learned from the real estate industry is that there is an actual kind of magic number of how many times you can follow up with people to be most effective. I believe there's a sweet spot between about 36 times a year and about 50 times a year. So I think once a week is starting to get almost excessive. 36 times a year is probably right at the lower end. But if you think about all kinds of marketing that you hear and see every day, that repetition over and over again is really what makes you top of mind with somebody. So to recap today, to take territory is great. Obviously, again, ask for the territory, take the territory, capture the database and leads, follow up with those people, and then ask for business and do a call to action. And then rinse and repeat over and over again. In my opinion, between like 36, 52 times a year, you need to be doing that. So I hope today's podcast has been helpful for you. If you're liking the content, please share it with a friend. My personal hope is that you would subscribe and share it, and that would help us get the message out to more people. Feel free to go to our website and get more resources and PDFs on there as well. If there's a topic you want to hear, if there's a comment you want to leave for me, if there is a person you think I should be interviewing on this podcast, we're going to be interviewing some really cool guests here in the future. I'm excited to announce. Please leave that in the comments or send me an email at derek@derektye.com. Hope you're having a great day, and talk to you again soon.